Welcome to the Smoke Break. I'm your host, your old pal Zane, here with Zoe Schwartz.
Hello.
Taylor Barrett.
What up?
And hilarious comedian Bryan Bixby.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for being here, Brian.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad that we were able to get you before you left because you're moving soon.
Yeah. I'm moving at the end of this month, so I'm glad that I was able to do this. And
I appreciate you. So you're moving at the end of this month. How are you feeling about that? Like, is that something you're excited for? Something you're nervous about?
I mean, it's a mix of both feelings. I think it'd be weird if I didn't have both feelings about it. Like, I'm excited for like new things and like just like new environment, and hopefully the like invigoration that comes from that, you know, because things start to get stale after I've been here for like 8 years. So, you know, it's you start to feel a little stagnant maybe, and hopefully it, you know, I'm excited for that part of it. But then there's the other part that is like the insecurity or like the feelings of like the nervousness and like what's gonna happen or what's gonna, you know, people. Well, like for one, people ask me like, so you got like a place and a job lined up, and
why are you so
like,
ahead of me right now?
No.
Are you supposed to do that?
Yeah. People, well, and that's a big thing. Is like a lot of times people, if you're doing something that maybe other people want to do, but they're a little still too scared to move on it, then they give you all of these reasons,
the things they're worried about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're like projecting their fears onto you.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like you should be more fearful of doing it because of these reasons that I'm fearful of doing it.
And
have you ever thought about if you move and nobody likes you?
Yeah.
It's like, now I am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's like, I don't know if people are like trying to stop you from doing that or trying to
Like
sort
prepare
of
you?
Yeah, or if in a way they're like, so how do I deal with those feelings?
Yeah.
Of like, aren't you afraid nobody will like you? And if you're not, then how do I do that?
Yeah.
How do I not, you know?
They're kind of like trying to like analyze, you know, their own fears through like your lens. Of,
Yeah.
like, how would you handle it, or how are you handling it?
That's probably what they're doing because we're such selfish people, like beings naturally.
Yeah, I mean, well, and that's just
or
what
self-centered, I guess.
Yeah, well, and that's the only way that you really can be, because
Right.
everything is you experience is through your own eyes and everything. So most of the times the thing that you judge somebody for or that you like you bring up those concerns about like, but what if you look like a fool, or what if you, then it's like those are all insecurities that you have. And it's like usually you're looking for something to like,
how do I relate to this?
How do I relate to this? Because that's the only way you
That's
can
how I pick all the topics for the podcast. So I'm just like, what am I dealing with this week? Brian, help me figure this out.
Evicted, actually.
No, you know, people say like if someone says something shitty about you, even though it's like doesn't usually help, but it's like usually has more to do with something they're dealing with within themselves.
Yeah.
So I would say it's probably the similar vibe with like projecting.
I mean,
some fears.
it's almost always, I think, a projection of like whatever, you know, whenever you're criticizing another person of something, then it's like a lot of times that's something that you're kind of not willing to admit.
Yeah, or wrestling
you're
with
doing
yourself.
or wrestling in yourself.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
That's just sort of, we use other people a lot to sort of like try to figure out what we're doing and where like how we should feel and like all of that stuff. You know?
Yeah. Definitely.
Which is to a certain extent is probably like part of our evolution, right? Because we need each other to survive.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it manifests in these ways that then kind of like fuck up our communication or like our relationships with other people. Yeah, because you're kind of like, hey, I'm already like trying not to overthink about this stuff. And now you're over here like, hey, have you thought about this? You're like, yeah.
They're like overthinking for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
totally.
Because like what the decision that you're making and the action you're taking is almost giving them anxiety, because that's the only way that you can really understand what another person is doing or going through is by putting yourself in that place. And so then you get that anxiety of like, oh, what if I was moving? Well, aren't you afraid of like what are you gonna do when you get there, and like what if it doesn't work out? And it's like, that's because that's what the anxiety that you're feeling about.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
has that been
yourself in their place?
Oh, sorry to cut you.
No,
has that been messing with you at all? Like, has it like made you question any of your choices, or made you like double down on anything that you're worried about? Like, has it? Yeah.
No, I mean, sometimes for like a second, I feel sort of like insecure or like something about like my inability to answer that, like because I feel like I like maybe I'm showing myself as a fool because I haven't thought about this.
I should have all these answers for this thing that is also new to me.
Yeah, exactly. But then I've gotten good at checking myself and that feeling and being like, you know what? No, they're just worried about that. They're projecting that sort of thing onto me, and maybe they don't understand. Then you sort of go back to your own like confidence and like, well, no, whatever happens, I'll figure it out. I got it.
I feel like the concept of like I don't know and I'm okay with that, like as an answer, like really freaks people out.
Yeah.
Like the fear of uncertainty has scared people out of doing a lot of things, and the comfortability with uncertainty has allowed people to just like explore new places and move to places that they would never dream of, and just like try things and just be okay with kind of whatever happens and be able to operate around those things.
Yeah. Well, and something that like there was a study that like I was looking at, and they were talking about how people would rather know there's a chance of 100% shock than a 50% shock. So it's like they would rather know something bad was going to happen than something bad might happen.
Yeah, the uncertainty, is really hard for us to deal with. Yeah, we really like to like put things in boxes. Our brain feels safer. We can categorize things like
bad things are much worse when you're not expecting it. If you're totally expecting it, then it's like, then it's much easier to accept.
Of course it happened. I planned for it.
Yeah. It makes me think about like the concept of just like a gray area in general, and how I think that like it is something that probably would be a good exercise for us to all be more comfortable with gray areas. And I think like the need for like answers and things to be complete or, super clear is actually like causes a lot of suffering probably, and like prevents us from taking risks that probably could turn out really, or getting like that decision paralysis thing where you're like, if I don't have the perfect solution, then I can't make the move,
So you've moved around a little bit. What's been your experience with like moving?
Oh man. Well, I feel like I've been in Oregon now for a while, but I moved. I was like, I got to get out of Oregon. Like as soon as I moved to San Diego before I was even like 18, like right before I turned 18. And then I was there for like a year and a half. And then after a while I was like, I think I need to go home. I feel weird here. And so I moved when I was like not ready at all. So that was definitely an interesting.
And like, what do you think made you not ready?
I think I was just like it took me a while to grow up. I feel like I didn't become a grown up until I was in like my later 20s, then like I was like mature in some ways, but I feel like immature in a lot of other ways. So I think I was just really young. I moved down there with some friends though. So it was pretty cool. And like, I don't necessarily regret it, but I think it was just this sense of like, I got to get out of this small town that I'm from, and then I ended up moving to Portland because I'm from Eugene. Then I moved to Portland when I got back. So that was like a nice, like my sisters are here. It's actually somewhat of a city.
Yeah.
And, so I've moved around a decent amount, but that was the biggest, most dramatic move, I think.
Where you were kind of just like, I'm just jumping into this and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, and I was like a kid, like literally a kid.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I moved to China when I was like 19.
Oh yeah, you did that too.
So it was like I was there for like 3 years, and that was like I wanted to I want to get out of my small town. Fuck this place. You've been to my small town. Thank you for doing that show.
Yeah, that was a fun show.
That's why you go to China. You're just like, I get why you did meth. Okay. But
do they have meth in China?
No, I had meth in Burns though.
That's why he came back from China.
They were all out.
Jonesing.
It's been 3 long years. We need to go back to Burns.
Go back to Burns and do meth.
Straight there.
That's sad.
But well, I mean, I think that like we have these ideas of like, if I go to a new place, the problems that I have at this old place might not be there. Like if like I'm tempted by drugs here, then maybe I can go to a place where there's not that, or maybe I can restart my life. I think like I was looking for a sense of like a new life.
Yeah.
Because because of like where I was before, I was using heavily. Like I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have, so I figured, I can use less and I can find my community. So it's like for me, that was my reason for moving. But it was also just like, I guess, realizing that like there were certain things that I was escaping, but there was also certain things I was bringing with me, like
that's the problem with like moving to like get away from is that was all within you anyway. Like that wasn't, part of it is your environment, and obviously you can get away from meth if you can't get meth in China and like you're not smoking.
I found it,
but unless you try hard enough.
Yeah, exactly. Like that stuff always follows you.
Yeah,
and, like,
exactly.
There's some things you can get away from, but like for the most part, I think that those struggles that you have, they'll go with you anywhere. You have to deal with them because it's inside, and it's easy to think that it's the outside world that's like pushing you to have all those like bad habits and all of that stuff and be like, well, I just need to, if I just go somewhere else, then all of that will change. And it's like, well, no, it won't.
Because you're there. You're a big part of you.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think that's true. Yeah. Well, do you think that, but like, do you think that would help you then maybe sort of like be like, all right, well then it's almost like it narrows down what you can blame it on. And then you're like, it is me then, you know, so maybe it could be good for some people.
I think it definitely helps. When I was younger, I realized like I moved around a bunch. I moved around a bunch of different small parts of the city that I lived in. Then I moved to Seattle, and like so I was just around a lot of different groups of people. And one thing that really put that concept into perspective for me was like just overlapping personality types. Like this type of person that I was interacting with also exists in Seattle. You know what I mean? Like there was, I remember like kind of having that aha moment where someone just like very boldly reminded me of a person that I was interacting with that I was like trying to get away from. And then I was just like, oh shit, you're kind of everywhere. You know, it doesn't matter where I go. This type of person is going to exist, and this other type of person that I also liked is going to exist. So in order for me to learn how to operate, my location isn't going to change much about that. There might be new opportunities, might be like different people that offer me new opportunities, but I also might lose opportunities by moving. So I just kind of have to figure that out within myself and be comfortable in that gray area we were talking about.
Well, I like what you said about like there's also these people that I don't like. There's kind of like archetypes and just copies of them everywhere, but there's also copies of people that I do like.
Right.
So it's like I think that's an important thing to remember, especially when you're moving to a new place. Is like, yes, I'm going to run into more assholes, but I'm also going to run into more friends.
Yeah. There's a lot of like, I don't know, I think that there's few, like there's people in like their attitudes and their behavior kind of lands on a spectrum, but you can still fit most people into I think a small group of categories. Like most people are very much the same. So it's like, there's the people that are good influences because, you know, they drive you to like make good choices and to like, you know, sort of like hold yourself accountable or do whatever, you know, all of that. And then there are other people that, you know, sort of reinforce the negative side because that's what they are doing, you know, and that's sort of where they're like, that's the feeling that they're drowning in is that. And then you see that and those, you know, misery loves company. So it's like these like people that, you know, that are like miserable or anything or like having bad habits and all of that, they like to commiserate and they like to, and they don't like you to, I mean, nobody likes you to leave the group, and people are also uncomfortable with leaving the group, so that you get stuck in that like, well, I want to make better choices, but I'm gonna lose I'm gonna leave these people, this like community or whatever, and even if it's a bad community, you still want to be a part of that. And
the sense of belonging is really has like a very strong pull to it.
Yeah, it makes me think about like just like when you were talking about just like how I don't know, just made me think of the idea of like the human condition produces like there's only so many ways that we can kind of cope with the human because there's certain struggles that are really like universal or just experiences like you said. And so I think like with the different categories of people, it's like some people are like, okay, like this is the way I'm going to cope with this by like always thinking of the positive and like redirecting whatever, like, you know, people that are happy or have these habits that like help them not focus on the negative. And then people that are struggling, and it's not like anyone's fault. Like there's a million reasons why people don't have coping mechanisms or can't, you know, choose a better way to cope. But then there's people that use like substances or shitting on other people to lift themselves up or manipulating people, whatever, you know, like they're just kind of like basic ways that humans figure out how to survive. And some of them are like good and bring better stuff, and some of them are real hard to be around. And
I think a lot of that is like because I think like sort of the ego, the like idea of me and the consciousness that people have is such a relatively new thing in like life in general, at least like on this planet. And it's like we're still, so like if you look at like the grand scale of like time and the way how long things have existed, it's really not been that long that we've been thinking of like and what choices will I make, and we're still so strongly linked to these like base instincts in like the natural part of our brains that we're, you know, so it's like, how do I cope with this like feeling? And it's like, well, we don't even understand where this like it's just feelings come from, we don't even know where emotions and feelings and all of that come
something
from.
that I had heard that I really liked was just like, give people compassion that like this is their first time being a human. It's
Oh yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
like this is all our first go.
I heard that in relation to like my mom. Like I saw this thing that was just like, be kind to your mom. This is her first time being a person too. And I was just like,
that's a really good.
Didn't need to cry right now. I'm gonna call my mom. I literally texted her and I was like, hey, how you doing? No reason. Just want to check in.
Oh, that's delightful.
But I think that's where you see a lot of the like improvements in society. Like there's no doubt that as people, as a group of, as the whole group, we're better than we were 100 years ago. And, we treat people better and all of that. And I think, if as long as our species can survive and not kill itself, I think we'll get better and better at the like coping and figuring out how to like, master the natural side of ourselves that isn't that's sort of outside, because the like me part of you is
the
like
ego,
a conglomeration of all of that stuff, but that stuff still like exists by itself.
Totally.
So you gotta like figure that out and like
figure out where the balance is.
And each generation we'll just keep getting better at it, because
that's our hope.
At like exponential growth rate too. Like Gen Z compared to like millennials, they're like so much more self-aware. It's fucking amazing.
I was thinking like to sort of try and tie it up. Like I was thinking like moving is a choice. We have more choices now. Like I think that's something that's changed. Like a lot of people didn't have nearly as much choice and control over their lives in the past and history. So that also makes it more complicated. But moving is an example of like one of the choices that a lot of people didn't have.
And I will like say like, because the other side of like when people ask me and they have all the like anxiety sort of in my place for it, I think one thing that they don't know about my past and all of that, and it's like this isn't the first big move that I've made. I've done this. This will be like the 5th or 6th time that I've moved to a different state. This is like the 4th time that I've moved halfway across the country. Like it's it's sort of it's just something that I've done before for the same reasons of like I grew up in a small town of like 700 people. I saw everybody always seemed so trapped, and just like got stuck in place, and I didn't want that. And like, so it's I don't know where I was going.
I like how the moving, like it brought out all these deeper things.
Well, I mean, I think that like with moving, it's something somebody had told me like moving or like traveling is like really a time to like reflect. And because like I remember I was like traveling on a train in China. I had it was like a 2-day trip or some shit, and I was like, it was just way the fuck across it. And I remember just sitting on the train being like, I need to like look at everywhere I've been, everywhere I'm going, where I'm at right now, and just reflect on that, because it's like there's a lot of time has gone by, and this is like a really good time to just kind of like wrap things up and just reflect on where we've been and where we want to go. So
yeah, definitely a good time for reflection, a good time for like, and it rejuvenates like a motivation to like move in some direction because of novelty. New things spike dopamine loves novelty. That's your motivation hormone, the motivation chemical. And so it's like, a lot of times that feeling stuck, and then something new just makes you like,
I'm excited again.
You're like excited, and you're invigorated to go out and try new things and be retrospective and all of that stuff, so
absolutely
a lot of changes.
Well, cool. We're going to take a real quick break, and we will be right back with the smoke break. And we are back with the smoke break. I'm your host, your old pal Zane, here with Zoe Schwartz.
Hi.
Taylor Barrett.
What up?
And Bryan Bixby.
Hi. Fuck, I missed it.
Well, if you went in order, I understand why your brain went there.
You're totally good. So the thing that we want to talk about next is insecurity.
What do you know? I just felt it.
Yeah.
Nice.
I messed up. Now I have to keep
How
going.
dare
What
you
do
not
I
know?
do now?
That was on purpose.
Scripted.
We wanted to get the juices flowing.
Absolutely,
this we often noticed. That's mean.
So like, what was the first thing you noticed like when something like not awkward happened? You're like, like this thing. What do I do now?
Like when I first noticed feeling insecurity.
Yeah.
It's hard to say when the first time. It was probably I said or did something as a child that like people were like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? Like, that's dumb, or like whatever, I mean, I think that like, because you don't just like feel insecure out of nowhere. Like it's
kinda built
usually
up.
it's built up from like a lot of, for me, I think it was a lot of outside people telling me like, what are you doing, or that's weird, or that's stupid, or you're you know, and then you start to internalize that, and then you start telling yourself that, and a lot of that insecurity ends up being the voices of other people who maybe beat you down, or like, you know.
Well, that was something that like I had heard, was that like all problems are interpersonal relationship problems. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And they basically made the case that like if you were born on a planet where there was nobody else and you never had any knowledge of anybody else, then you would not have any problems, right? Because like loneliness comes from knowing that there's other people out there. You know, like the voices that you were talking about being in your head are coming from other people. Like you're comparing yourself and being like, oh, I'm this, too much of this, too much of that because of other people. So like just that idea that like we have to figure out how to maneuver, or like maneuver with other people, but like also maneuver our own feelings and be like, okay, like I need to know how to talk to people, but I also need to know how to talk to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without that influence of outside people, you would just do kind of what made
chill.
you like happy,
you pick
and
your
just
nose.
like you'd pick your nose, you'd fart, you'd do whatever, you know.
Yeah, I do that anyways.
I feel like I feel like
Bring
pretty
it on.
sad though. Like I think, but that's also like one of the things about the human condition is that we do need, because we are community. Like our brains don't develop if we don't interact with other people. So we're literally programmed to be in relation with other people. So I think if we were alone, we might just die. Like, I don't know. I mean, I know you can live on your own, but I do think like humans were just, so I think that is another one of those, like, it's like the conundrum. Like we have to figure out how to commune with other people, but it's never not going to cause problems. And then ideally all those problems will help us learn
and I think,
shit.
but on the other side of what you were saying of like, well, like I learned to feel insecure because I built these standards for myself around something else. I think that can also, like, you can use that same concept in a positive way, where you can like I can learn to be secure and confident because of outside influences and stuff like that. You can take notes from the people around you that are doing the things that you do like and that you do admire, and you can learn to be secure with yourself, and you can learn to like just go through maybe not life, but like a day or a week, but like by holding on to like a layer of confidence that might not have been there because you saw somebody else do it in a way that you admired,
or just even seeing yourself through somebody else's eyes, you know. Sometimes I just see myself so much through my own lens that like once somebody's like, oh, you're funny, or you're good at rapping, or you're this, you're that, when somebody says that, I'm like, oh, like this, like I see myself as not that funny, not that good at rapping, but when I see like, you know, enough people kind of like reaffirm that, like it can go both ways, you know. You can use it to help build you up or to tear you down.
I was just going to say, it makes me think that like some of the best, even though ideally we should get like our self-love from ourselves, but the truth of the matter is like often the best we ever feel is like when someone, like if we're in love, you know, and someone loves us and just like adores us. And then also when someone rejects us is like the worst you can fucking feel, you know what I mean? So it's, I think,
I mean, the interesting thing with that is that like, whenever because you can only experience what's happening inside of you, that feeling of somebody else loving you is also coming from yourself. That's the only place that it can come from.
That's a really good point.
So like feeling that, like, oh, they love me, you have to generate that feeling of being loved for that.
You have to fully accept that love.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you have
feeling is coming from your brain.
That's the only, you can't feel somebody else's feel. There's no connection between people in that way.
It's not
like,
tangible. They can't just hand you.
There's nothing passing between you.
There's shooting
all
love
generated.
At you.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's not how it works.
Kamehameha.
I love you. And the same thing with like feeling like rejection or anything.
You're right.
That you're creating that, and it's like
it's so much easier said than done, though. Right?
Oh yeah, of course.
Because the layer of insecurity can like start creating like what ifs and doubts. It's like, what if they're just saying that? What if there's something that they don't know about me? And what if they don't see me the way that I do? And it's like shedding all those things to just be like, they do love me. Is a very difficult, confusing process.
Oh God.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I've spent a lot of time, because you know, anytime somebody, like enough people tell me that I'm funny or I'm good at comedy and all of that, and like there's a big part of me and a loud voice that is like, well, they're just saying that. They're just trying to make you feel better.
We're such assholes to ourselves.
Somebody probably like 12 years ago told me that people only told me I was funny because they were worried I was going to kill myself.
Oh my
Jesus
God.
Christ.
And
Who the fuck said
yeah,
that?
so and then
you're like Adam Posse.
and then but then so that it still rings in my head where I'm like, oh, they're just telling me I'm funny
That's gonna
because
ring in
so
my
I don't
head.
blow my brains out or something, you know? And it's so
You're all,
it's,
thanks for that little nugget that's never going away.
Well,
It's like planted itself in your brain.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, like just to speak to that, like the, you know, like we kind of hold on to these things that like people tell us. Like I think that's, I don't know, it's a tricky thing because it's like I feel like, you know, we're trying to like create past instances that like prove something right, you know, like we're trying to like look back and be like, what proves this right, you know, and we can do that with bad things. We can say like, oh well, I thought I wasn't funny and then I had a bad set, so that means that somebody saying that I wasn't funny is proved right by this bad set. So it's like we can very easily like, you know, find a way to like make our insecurities true even if they aren't, you know.
Yeah, you can find all of that. I mean, and the flip side of that is you could also find all the reasons that your insecurities aren't real and shouldn't be true. But it's so much easier to look for the bad. I mean, really, our brains are wired to look for bad.
The bad is just a lot louder. I feel like in your head, where it's so much more bold and like bigger, and so like you have to like really navigate and weave through all the fucking bad parts to get to be like, okay, well, fuck this, fuck that. Okay, maybe I do feel good about this, and like it's almost like manually you have to do it.
Do you guys feel like at all, guys, I feel like because comedy is so up and down, because you can be a really funny person and have like a shit set one night and then the next night you can fucking crush, and then I feel like for me it's really helped me realize that so much of those ups and downs are like you don't need to pay as much attention to them, and I think that's why I think comedy's been like really good for my mental health. And one of the ways is because it teaches me to like let shit roll off my shoulders more, because there is such a extreme between a bad set and a good set, and it can really like be like, whoa, one day I'm like I'm fucking funny, and the next day I'm like I'm a fucking idiot.
I still haven't gotten good at adjusting to that.
No.
My mood fluctuates so much based on how
mine does too.
my last set went. I can feel on top of the world one night, and then my next set doesn't go as well, and I'm just like, I suck, I'm terrible, I'm awful.
I don't feel like it gives you perspective though. Like
I mean, it does, but again, that's something that just like, you know, is sort of accepting any like good things about you. It takes more effort to like
accept the good.
Because I'm definitely a little bit better now, where it's like I don't feel that like a crushed feeling from a bad set as like for as long as I used to. Like maybe it'll last for a little while after the set, maybe even that night, but the next morning I don't wake up like, oh, I'm terrible,
it's
my set I bombed, you know, like it's like, oh no, I get faster and faster at like bouncing back and being like, oh no, actually this is just how it goes. It's up and down.
And I think just even recognizing that is, you know, like I think that's super important, is that like I can't tie myself to like a single instance. I can't tie myself to this one set.
We've talked about that before.
Like I can't be like, oh, like I'm a bad comic because I had a bad set. It's like I'm a comic because I'm doing sets, you know, like I'm going to have a variety of different sets, but like some will be better, some will be worse. But you know, I think being able to like tie your own worth to like something that you see in yourself, you know, is like, and I think like even just setting the goal of like, I'm trying, you know, like
putting yourself out there, like that's something to be proud of.
Exactly. Like
so
I'm trying, I showed up, like being able to tie your worth to I think, like tying your worth to trying instead of tying your worth to the outcome of having tried.
Yeah. And this is all sort of like goes to sort of prove what you were saying, like with like comedy or anything like that, where it's like, it really is, because that's all that you can apply that sort of thinking to everything in your life. But yeah, you can see it a lot in comedy, and it's like because it's narrowed down, and you can see like, oh no, I'm not defined by any of these sets or any of these jokes or any of that.
Yeah.
And like I can find the good things and the times that I did well and made the right choice and wrote the good joke and all of that stuff. So
I think people that want to do comedy too have a hard time wrapping their head around the idea that like comedians that they've seen crush have bombed and probably will again in the future.
Once you do it enough, you learn that though.
Yeah, you show up to enough sets and you're like, wow, this fucking hilarious ass person didn't have a good set. Like, okay, that's normal. And then also thinking that that's normal, realizing that that's just like part of the process, and you really do have to like love the journey, and how that's applicable to a lot of like pretty much any avenue of passion. You know, like, and that's going to come with a layer of like insecurity. Learning how to like navigate that is vital to feeling good and having confidence around whatever you're pursuing.
Yeah. Definitely. I feel like anxiety. I feel like comedy, though, like I heard somebody say this one time, like there's really no other performance art where you get up and practice your shit the first time. And you know, like when you're learning to paint, you're not like putting it in the fucking museum. Putting it in a museum, like the first paint you do. But like when you do comedy, the first time you try a joke, you're in front of people, and that's why good people bomb, because sometimes you don't know how something's going to resonate until you say it out loud. So I do think comedy is like specifically different in that way, where it's like, that's why even really good people bomb, because you don't know if it's funny until you fucking say it out loud. And you can't really, I mean, you can practice at home, but you can't find out if it's funny at home.
I've always said it's one of the most unique mediums for performance. Because like with playing guitar, fucking singing, you can do anything in the comfort of your own home.
You wouldn't just be like, I'm going to go up and learn how to play guitar at an open mic.
I've had a lot of people fight like who maybe know me, whether they know me from comedy first and then they find out how insecure I am, or they know me in person and know how like insecure I can be, and they find out that I do comedy, and it blows their mind, because it is it's putting yourself out there to the mode. Like you're I'm gonna go in front of a whole group of people and see if this works, and maybe it doesn't. And for some reason for some reason that I don't even understand, I can do that despite the fact that I'm so insecure. For some, that's the one area where I'm okay with that happening.
I'm so glad you found it then, because like think about if you had it like that. Like that's cool that you got to see those two sides of yourself. Like that's a really important experience, probably.
The duality of man.
Duality of man. All right, well, we're gonna take a real quick break, and we will be right back with the smoke break. And we are back with the smoke break. I'm your host, your old pal Zane, here with Zoe Schwartz.
Hi.
Taylor Barrett.
What up?
And Bryan Bixby.
Hello.
Excellent. So for our last,
good, guys, good job.
You nailed that one.
We did that one.
I was ready for that.
I've done so many awkward ones.
This is the third one. This is my last chance to get it right. Here we go.
There's some finesse on that one.
We'll have you back.
Although I felt weird about saying hello.
No, it feels dorky no matter what. I just want to go, hi. Lean in.
So the last topic that I wanted to talk about was, I guess, our tendency, or at least my tendency, I feel like, is to tie my personality or even my identity to like the things that I'm doing. For a long time, like I wanted to be a rapper, and I'm like, oh, I'm a rapper. Rappers do this. Rappers talk like this. They dress like this, and it's like getting yourself so wrapped up in the thing that you do and the things that those people do that like, you can either like lose yourself, no pun intended. Because it rap. Okay. There we go.
I also wanted to address like the kind of flip side of that, where it's like you're pulling a part of what you believe rap is and kind of like absorbing that. But then there's also the other side of it where you like when you're doing it, part of what you are becomes what your rap is. And I think like that's a really cool part of getting invested in something that you're passionate about. Like when I was like playing a ton of fighting games, it was cool being able to see like my play style just immediately be recognized when I was like watching film or like looking at fucking streams or tournaments or whatever. I would just be like, I have a unique play style that's like identifiable by like watching me play this character, the decisions that I'm making and shit like that. And like like watching your own personality become like intrinsically tied to your performance is like is very rewarding, and it's interesting to kind of analyze.
Definitely.
That was deep.
Yeah, I mean, everybody sort of like your passion is a part of your identity with everybody, the things that they're passionate about. Somebody who's like a family person and they're passionate about their family, and like that's their identity, you know? And it's like, for me, I don't have that. Mine is, my most passionate thing is doing comedy. And I'm very, very tied to being a comedian as part of like my identity and who I am. And like when I meet people, I don't feel like they know me until they've like seen my like I don't, and it's like I also don't want to talk about comedy with people who don't do comedy, but I kind of want them to know that I do comedy or like
Right.
see my
Look,
comedy.
I'm fucking hilarious.
Just-
Okay.
yeah,
Just so
well,
you know.
yeah, and it's just like I don't know. It's like and part of that also comes from like I feel it comes from my like insecurity, and I feel like a weird person, or I feel like I'm not, like I say a lot of dumb things and I struggle in conversation.
That, like if
'cause I
you didn't
don't
have the
know,
context
like,
of you being a comedian, you'd be like, why did he say that?
yeah, and it's sort of like it balances everything out, where it's like, yeah, I might suck in conversation, or I'm not good at, relationships, or I'm not good at all of these things. I'm not a cool person, but I do stand-up comedy, and that's pretty cool, right?
I think you're good at conversation.
Yeah,
I think you're doing great. But I don't know.
I think that might not be true.
Relationships,
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe, but like,
I don't
We're
think
gonna
I'm
have to
good
dig to find out.
at
Yep.
any of that stuff. So it's
Yeah.
like,
Well,
it's
you're
like
wrong.
being the fact that I'm a comedian like balances out like,
Yeah.
I know I'm awkward to talk to, but I'm also a comedian, so
Yeah.
that's points for something.
You're like, I'm
Like,
quirky.
Well,
Yeah.
I think like the thing that like I'm hearing is that like it gives context. It gives context to like who you are. Like, yes, like I am awkward, but like I'm also somebody who makes jokes about being awkward.
yeah,
You know, like
and it sort of adds to it adds to my identity, where it's like, yeah, I'm awkward, but I'm not just awkward. Like I do this like kind of cool thing that
Yeah.
like
Other people
not
can
a
do.
lot of people can
Yeah.
do.
especially awkward
And
people.
like, yeah, definitely not awkward people. Like, that I know it'll blow your mind, but I do comedy. And, if you see me do comedy, your mind would be even more blown, because there's so many people that
Yeah.
have met me like in day-to-day life first, and then they see the comedy and they're like, what? You're
Yeah.
a different person.
Yeah.
Completely different,
I feel like what you're trying to say is it completes you.
You're dating comedy, and I think you have a great relationship with comedy.
I've thought that before.
Have
Like
you?
I'm so bad with relationships that I've sort of started to tie like where like
That's
I hear a
adorable.
love song, I think about
Oh my
comedy.
God, that's
I do.
so
You're married to the game, bro.
It's terrible. I know it's like it's not gonna lead anywhere good for me,
Oh my
but
God.
it's like I'm
It's
very
adorable.
I love that.
It's an abusive relationship sometimes.
It is sometimes.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
and I feel like that like even just like with like like with music or comedy or anything like that, it like because we tie our identity to it, it's like how like I don't know. I guess it's like trying to figure out like that relationship,
Yeah.
It's like trying to have a healthy relationship with it. Like, is it something that I only enjoy when it goes well? Is it something that like I enjoy, even with like people? Is this somebody like, do I enjoy this person just being around, or is it, do they have to be at their best?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's trying to figure out like, what is my relationship with this? Cause it's like, I feel like, oftentimes like, I think that like we had, who was it? It was Amelia who kind of brought up like, you're not that thing just because you're not doing it right now.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, like because it's like
That's
just
fucking
because
deep.
it was, and I really appreciated that because it was just kind of like the idea that like if just because you didn't go out to a mic tonight doesn't mean you're not a comedian, but like because we in our minds,
Brian,
like,
you're all, I don't know about that. Depends on who you ask.
but I mean, but I think that like like for example, like I'm still funny when I go to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, am I a on stage? Like, am I a stand up? But like maybe not. Am I still a comedian? Like maybe. Like there's I think there's like if we tie our personality or even our identity to like the things that thing brings us instead of like doing the act, then it's like
That's a good
I
point.
feel like we get less upset if we don't go out tonight, because
Yeah.
it's like if being a comedian means writing jokes tonight, then I'm a comedian because I wrote jokes tonight, not because I went out and did a set.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's
I guess a lot of like, and I'm somebody who's just always wanting to go on stage.
Oh, you're
and
always
trying
going.
to
You're
go.
always out there. I love that. I love
and
that.
a lot of that is just that, like, because it completes me.
Yeah.
And in this way that it's like, I'm so insecure and I don't feel like I'm funny off stage.
Mhm.
But then when I go on stage, I get to feel confident. I
Yeah.
get to feel funny. And it's just like, I just want it again and again.
Yeah. Well, and just
I don't think like some people do, like you can beat yourself up of like, oh, I'm not going out and that means I'm not a comedian. And then you have to like wrestle with that sort of feeling. I don't wrestle with that just because after a couple of days without going up, I want to go up, not so
Exactly.
that I can prove, no, I'm a comedian, but
Mm.
because it's just part of it. I just want to go, I have to go up. I want to, go
Well,
out and
And I think even just like recognizing like the parts, like when you say that like comedy completes you, like I think recognizing like the parts of it that like are giving us like like we maybe don't have access to that part of our identity, you know, like in day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Like if you're a nurse, like you don't get to tell just fucking like raunchy ass jokes.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like you feel like you're not being true to yourself, you know, but it's like when you get to be up on stage and like I know like people who are typically shy, like in most conversations, but like come alive on stage.
Yeah.
So it's like you get this access to this part of your personality that's like has always been there, but like you get to feel more when you're in that position.
Yeah. And that's a big thing that I like really wrestle with too, is that because I feel like, oh, I'm too weird or awkward or, you know, whatever, and I'm not funny. And then it's like, but I am on stage. And it's like, well, if you are on stage, then you are all the time. It's just like
That's
realizing that you don't have to, those lines aren't, you don't have to be on stage to be like, you are still all of those things at once. Like it's,
you're still outgoing, you're still funny, you're still all these things, but like maybe it wasn't in this context.
It makes me think of the concept of like self-actualization or whatever, because I feel like for me, I feel like until I didn't have like hobbies when I was younger, I just like hung out with my friends and like partied, and it was like thought it was cool. And then at a certain point I was like, who the fuck am I? Like, I don't even, and then so once I started doing comedy, I really felt like I was like, I could like sort of like, okay, this is like, I'm sure I'll realize more things about who I am now. Same thing when I finally went to school and like, I'm going to be a therapist, you know, like, but I think it was just sort of this, like, it was like it completed me in some ways too. Like those two things did, you know, so I think just makes me think about like there's parts of yourself that maybe until you put yourself in a certain context, you might not realize are there. And then comedy has sort of been like, no, this is part of who you are too. It's almost like, okay, like I don't know, like it's like a top of the pyramid or a building block and like figuring out who you are.
Yeah.
Like allowing people to like come alive in their area is so cool to see, because the best example that I can think of is like the really like shy nerdy kid that it's like probably like might be getting bullied at school and shit, but then he like goes to fucking like battle bots and is just like this aggro motherfucker that just like nobody can talk shit to him because he's like building a robot that'll just fuck up every other robot. It's like watching this person become this person that they wanted to be, but like we're almost like pushed down and not allowed to be. And then they just fucking come alive and will fuck you up with a robot, and it's so cool. So cool to see.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I don't know, like it's, and I'm sure a lot of my like of it coming like, because you do, when people are like doing their thing, you get to see them at their most like secure usually, and the most like themselves, and like and that it feels good to see that, and it's like that. You want to do that, and I'm sure I'm tied to that, because it's like I wanted to always be a comedian. I was like a weird 5-year-old kid that loved stand-up comedy, when most kids didn't have any clue what it was.
You watch like on demand, like Comcast on demand.
I watched like I watched like Comedy Central Presents and stuff like that. So it was like I always wanted, my dad was a big fan of stand-up, so like I'm sure some of it ties to also wanting to be like accepted by like my dad or whoever, whatever. And then even like the first time I did stand-up, I was 15. I was in high school. And I did it in front of my high school, and up to that point I was bullied a lot, and I wasn't very well liked, and like I got shat on all the time. And then I did stand up and I was funny, and then all of a sudden everybody liked me, and so it's like the fact that now I'm 31 and I'm still tying my like confidence and whether or not people like me to my comedy, that's just the way that's the way I've always been. It's the way I've always felt. So,
well, I feel like we have a tendency to kind of tie like our worth to something. It's like with some people tie themselves to their fucking jobs. They're just like, I do this job, so I'm this person. So like, this is what I'm my most real self. So it's like I think that's going to come from just about anywhere. It's just like figuring out like how to navigate that, how to how to do that in like a healthy way. So that way, on the days that like we're not feeling most ourselves, that we can still be like, no, I'm still doing myself a service by like showing up. But like, this wasn't my best day.
I think it's really important that you bring that up too, because I think there is this like huge wedge between people that like find their identity and their passion within like being successful in their field, and then people that have a job so that they can like be passionate and successful in their other like passion projects and stuff like that. Because the wedge between those two groups of people, it seems like I don't really know exactly how to even describe it, but I've been around people that like will like brag about working like 45-hour weeks and 50-hour weeks and 60-hour weeks, and I'm just like, you know, like maybe I got super exhausted by working like 35 that week because I was also doing, you know, 35 hours of my passion project and shit like that, and acknowledging that like that's where their sense of self and identity comes from on both sides is super important. There shouldn't really be animosity between those two
like
groups.
You work all the time, what a fucking loser. It's like you go out and hang out with friends and drink beer and fucking do comedy, what a loser. It's like both of us are just trying to like feel as most ourselves.
Exactly.
Feel like we're doing our time at justice.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the perfect way.
I feel like you have a purpose too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and feeding your like your ambition to your purpose and your like passion, and really I guess you could say it's sad. Like the saddest thing of all to me was always, because like I said, even when I was a kid, I knew what I wanted. I knew what I wanted to do, but I knew a lot of people who didn't. And sometimes then their identity can get tied up in drugs or, you know, I knew a lot of people like that where it's like, you know, I had some really close friends in like school that like they didn't know what they wanted to do. They had no like passion. They hadn't found passion in anything, or maybe they didn't find the confidence to pursue whatever passion that they had. And then the easiest thing that they could be passionate about was getting drunk all the time. Or like, you know, I had friends that, you know, I grew up with and we'd smoke weed together and stuff. And they would say things like, man, what's the point of living if I'm not high or whatever. And it's like, this is the direction that their passion is going is just, you know, and their identity is going to just defining themselves as somebody who, you know, does these bad habits and
or just habits in general. Like we're all trying to find that sense of like, I do this and it makes me feel better, you know? So it's like, it's when something like drugs is as accessible and easy to get that feeling of like, I do this, it makes me feel better. Like I've gone up and done a set and been like, oh man, that kind of made me feel worse. But I've gotten high and been like, that made me feel better. You know, it's like if I have to gamble on which one.
You have to accept the like the bad with the good too. And I mean, I guess that also would work with getting high. You have to accept sometimes you're gonna OD. Like,
sometimes you're gonna have a bad trip.
Sometimes you're gonna get too high and get scared of your friends.
But other times it'll be great.
Exactly. All right. Well, hey, Bryan, it was such a fucking treat to have you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you. I'm glad we were able to have you before you left, and I wish you the best of luck. And if you're ever back in town, we'd love to have you back.
Yeah, I'll be back for sure. Thank you guys for having me. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, that has been the Smoke Break. We will see you next time.
Peace out.
Later, players.